A boy disappeared from a cruise ship. Years later, he came back with a story no one believed. The sun was bright as the Broward family stood in line at the dock. People around them pulled suitcases, checked their tickets, and looked up at the huge ship in front of them. Cooper Broward, 7 years old, could hardly stand still. He bounced on his toes, his eyes wide. "Is that our ship?" he asked. His mom, Annie, smiled. "Yes, Cooper. That's it. We're going on that big ship." Cooper turned to his older brother Robbie, who was 10. "It's like a hotel and a mall and a swimming pool all in one." Robbie grinned. "Yeah, and we're gonna eat like 10 meals a day." Sledge, their dad, laughed. "That's the spirit." It was the Broward family's first real vacation in a long time. Life had been hard the last few years. There had been extra work shifts, bills, and quiet birthdays at home. But now, they were finally taking time for themselves. Annie had planned this cruise for months. Every detail had been checked. Everything was ready. When they finally stepped onto the ship, Cooper gasped. "Whoa!" The inside was shiny and loud. Lights blinked, music played, and people laughed as they explored the halls. Staff welcomed them with big smiles and handed out welcome drinks. Annie took a deep breath and let it out slowly. It felt like the weight of the world was finally off her shoulders. They reached their cabin on deck 8. It wasn't huge, but it was cozy. The beds were made, the window looked out at the sea, and everything smelled clean and new. Cooper threw himself onto one of the beds. "This is mine!" he shouted. Sledge ruffled his hair. "It's all yours, buddy." Annie set down their bags and began unpacking. She put Robbie's shirts in one drawer, Cooper's pajamas in another. She took out Cooper's favorite stuffed dinosaur, Max, and placed it on his pillow. "Max gets the best spot," she said. Cooper smiled. "He always does." The first few hours flew by. They had lunch at a buffet where Cooper tried pizza, spaghetti, and chocolate pudding all at once. Then they toured the ship. Robbie and Cooper found an arcade filled with blinking machines. Cooper played a racing game and beat Robbie by 1 point. They both cheered. After that, they walked around the top deck. There were pools, hot tubs, a climbing wall, and even a mini golf course. "Best vacation ever!" Cooper shouted as he ran from one thing to the next. Annie and Sledge watched from behind, holding hands. "He's so happy," Annie said. Sledge smiled. "That's all I wanted." By late afternoon, they returned to their cabin to rest. Cooper laid on his bed with Max, staring out the round window. The sea stretched forever in every direction. The sky was blue, and the waves looked soft and slow. Robbie sat beside him and taught him how to play a card game. Cooper didn't win, but he didn't care. He laughed every time Robbie made a silly face or told a joke. Dinner time came, and the family dressed up a little. Annie wore a light blue blouse and tied her hair back. Sledge wore a collared shirt that he only used on special days. Robbie looked neat in a white button-up. Cooper wore a shirt with tiny boats on it. Annie fixed his collar and kissed his cheek. "You look handsome," he giggled and said. "I look like Dad." They ate dinner in one of the dining rooms. There was soft music and big windows. Cooper got chicken tenders and fries. Robbie picked a burger. Annie and Sledge shared pasta and salad. The waiter brought a dessert cart, and Cooper's eyes lit up. He picked a slice of chocolate cake. As he ate, he told a story about a seagull he had seen on the railing earlier. Annie and Sledge laughed and listened closely. It felt good to laugh together again. After dinner, they walked along the deck. The sun was setting, and the sky turned orange and pink. Cooper pointed at everything, the ocean, the clouds, the tiny sailboat in the distance. Then he yawned. Annie looked down. Ready for bed, sweetheart? He nodded sleepily. Come on, let's get you tucked in, Sledge said. Back in the cabin, Cooper changed into his pajamas. They were blue and had little green dinosaurs on them. He hugged Max and climbed into bed. Annie sat beside him. She pulled the blanket up to his chin and brushed the hair from his forehead. You had a big day, she said. He nodded, already half asleep. Best day ever. Sledge stepped into the room. Don't forget, stay in bed, okay? We'll be just upstairs. I know, Cooper said softly. Annie kissed his forehead. If you need us, we're only one floor up. Cooper yawned. Okay. They stood by the door for a moment. Annie looked back. You think he'll be okay? Sledge nodded. He's fine. Just 1 hour. He's wiped out. They left the room quietly, leaving the light dimmed low. As they walked to the upper deck, the sounds of the party grew louder. The captain's formal night had begun. There was music, lights, and the sound of glasses clinking. People were dressed up, dancing, and enjoying the night. Annie smiled, but it was small. She kept checking her watch. He's probably already asleep, Sledge said gently. I know, she replied. I just worry. They stepped into the event space. Waiters walked by with drinks and trays of desserts. A band played near the front of the room. Sledge grabbed 2 glasses of champagne and handed one to Annie. She took a sip but kept glancing toward the exit. They mingled. They danced once. They talked to another couple they had met earlier that day. But Annie's eyes kept drifting to the time. After a while, she leaned in close. Let's skip dessert. Sledge didn't argue. They made their way back toward the elevators, still dressed up, still smiling, ready to check on their son. Annie and Sledge stepped out of the elevator and walked down the quiet hallway of Deck 8. Their shoes tapped softly against the carpet. The ship had quieted down. Most guests were either asleep or still upstairs enjoying the party. Annie held her shoes in one hand. She had taken them off to walk more comfortably. I'm glad we left early, she whispered. I kept thinking about him. Sledge smiled gently. He's probably fast asleep. You saw how tired he was. They reached the door to their cabin. Annie slid in the keycard and turned the handle. The door opened with a soft click. The cabin was dim. The only light came from the hallway behind them. Annie stepped in first. Then she froze. Sledge bumped into her from behind. What is it? Annie didn't answer right away. Her eyes were fixed on the bed. It was empty. Cooper wasn't there. The blanket was pushed down. His pillow was dented where his head had been. But now, it was just a bed. On the floor beside it lay Max, Cooper's stuffed dinosaur. Annie rushed forward. Cooper? She called out. She checked the bathroom. It was dark and empty. Cooper, baby, she called again, louder now. She dropped to her knees and looked under the bed. Nothing. She opened the closet. Empty. She pulled back the curtains. No sign of him. Sledge turned on all the lights. He looked behind the door, behind the chairs, behind the little table. Nothing. Annie's hand shook. He's not here, she said. He's gone. Sledge grabbed the phone on the wall and called the front desk. This is Sledge Brewer in cabin 823. Our son is missing. 7 years old. We just got back. He's not here. The voice on the other end was calm but firm. We'll alert security right away, sir. Stay where you are. Within minutes, security officers arrived at the cabin. They asked quick questions, wrote things down, and checked the room for clues. Then they asked for a recent photo. Annie handed them one from her phone. Was he upset before bedtime? One officer asked. No, Annie said. He was happy all day. tired but happy. Was he used to waking up in the middle of the night? Not usually. Another officer spoke into a walkie-talkie. Start checking security footage. Cabin 823. Possible child exit. They asked Annie and Sledge to stay in the room while they pulled up camera feeds. Annie paced the floor. Her hands wouldn't stop moving, ringing, gripping, shaking. Sledge sat on the bed and held Max, staring at the wall. Robbie came back after a few minutes. His eyes were wide. "What's happening?" he asked. Annie grabbed him and pulled him into a hug. "Your brother's missing," she said through tears. Robbie looked shocked. "He was here when I left." "We know," Sledge said quietly. "He must have left after that." About 20 minutes later, an officer returned with an update. "We found him on the camera near your hallway," she said. "At 10:52 p.m., he opened the cabin door and walked out alone. He looked sleepy, calm." "Where did he go?" Annie asked. "He got into the elevator. We traced him to deck 12. "What's on deck 12? Sledge asked. The officer hesitated. "There was a live music event. Lots of people. A crowd." "Then what?" Annie pressed. The officer's face changed. "That's where the footage ends. He disappears into the crowd. We've checked every angle. No clear sight of him after that." Annie covered her mouth. "He's still on the ship. He has to be. We've started a full search," the officer said. "We've notified the captain. The crew is already helping." Annie and Sledge left the room. They couldn't sit still. They needed to find him. They ran up to deck 12. It was still busy. The live music had ended, but people were walking around, chatting, eating, laughing. Annie held up her phone, showing Cooper's photo to anyone who would look. "Have you seen this boy? Did you see a child tonight?" Most people said no. A few looked at the picture and frowned. Some said they might have seen someone like that, but couldn't be sure. A woman said she saw a boy standing near the railing earlier, but when she looked again, he was gone. Annie's voice grew shaky. Her hands trembled. "Where is he?" she whispered over and over. Sledge checked every stairwell, every hallway. He peeked into every corner. "Cooper!" he shouted. "It's Dad! Cooper!" No answer. Robbie walked beside his mom, holding her hand tightly. He didn't know what to say. He just kept walking. By 3 a.m., the captain had made a formal announcement. The music stopped. The lights came up. All passengers were asked to return to their cabins for a head count. Crew members checked every room. Staff opened storage rooms and cleaned out laundry carts. Security scanned areas not open to guests. Divers searched the lower decks. Annie stood on the main deck, staring out at the dark water. The wind pulled at her hair. She felt numb. Sledge stood beside her, holding her arm. "He's not in the water," he said, trying to believe it. "He can't be." But no one knew. At sunrise, the ship stopped. The captain spoke again over the intercom. "We have contacted the Coast Guard. A search has begun in the surrounding waters. Please remain calm." Helicopters arrived. Search boats circled the area. Cameras scanned the sea. Everyone was quiet. The passengers whispered as they walked past Annie. Some offered kind words. Others kept their distance. One woman handed Annie a tissue and said, "I'm so sorry." But nothing helped. No one had seen Cooper. No one knew where he had gone. The ocean was too big. And now, he was gone too. The cruise ship returned to port without Cooper. Annie stepped off the ramp with Max, the stuffed dinosaur, pressed tightly to her chest. Robbie followed behind her, his eyes on the ground. Sledge walked beside them, holding the bags, his face pale and blank. The car ride home was silent. No one spoke. Annie stared out the window, but she didn't see anything. Her thoughts were frozen on the last time she saw Cooper, his sleepy eyes, his small voice, the way he clutched Max in the dark. Sledge kept both hands on the wheel. His grip was tight. Robbie sat in the back seat, leaning against the door. He didn't ask questions. He didn't cry. He just stared. When they got home, the house felt wrong. Too clean. Too quiet. Too empty. Cooper's bedroom door was still open. His bed was made. His toys were in place. The curtains were halfway drawn, letting in a soft light. Annie stepped inside and sat on his bed. She didn't say anything. She didn't cry yet. She just held Max and rocked slowly. Robbie stood in the doorway for a long time. He looked at the shelves, the drawings, the little shoes by the dresser. Then he turned and walked away without a word. Sledge sat down on the couch in the living room. He turned on the TV, but didn't watch it. The sound was low, just noise. Something to fill the space that Cooper used to fill with laughter. The next day, the news hit every channel. 7-year-old boy vanishes from cruise ship. Cooper Broward missing at sea. Annie couldn't escape the headlines. She saw her son's picture everywhere, on TV, on her phone, in emails. Every time she opened her eyes, she saw his face. People online had theories. Some thought it was an accident. Others said the cruise line had made a mistake. A few even blamed the parents. Annie stopped reading after the first day. She couldn't take it. The police came to their house with more questions. What was Cooper like? Had he ever sleepwalked before? Was there any reason he might run away? Annie answered everything as best she could, her voice shaky and raw. No, he never wandered. He was happy. We only left him for 1 hour. Just one. Sledge stayed quiet for most of it. He listened. He nodded. But he barely spoke. The officers were kind. They promised they were still looking. They said things like, "We're doing everything we can," and "Don't give up hope." But their eyes told a different story. Too much time had passed. Too many hours lost. The ocean was too big. Days turned into weeks. The search slowed down. The news moved on. And he kept Cooper's room exactly the same. Every morning, she smoothed the blankets. Every night, she sat on the bed and stared at the wall. She left the light on, just in case. She printed flyers with his photo and pinned them on the fridge, on the mailbox, on the church bulletin board. She checked her email every day. She answered every unknown number. But no one ever said, "We found him." Robbie changed too. He stopped laughing. He stayed in his room with the door closed. He didn't play video games. He didn't talk much at school. Teachers called and asked if he was okay, and he didn't know what to tell them. Sledge went back to work, but he wasn't the same. He stopped shaving. He stopped talking during dinner. Some nights, Annie found him sitting in the dark kitchen, staring at the floor with a full cup of cold coffee in front of him. They tried family counseling. It helped a little, but the pain didn't go away. Birthdays were the hardest. They still bought a cake. They still lit a candle. On Cooper's 8th birthday, Annie made his favorite, chocolate with blue frosting. Robbie placed Max on the chair where Cooper would have sat. The family sang softly, their voices shaking. Then they just sat there. No one touched the cake. One night, Annie woke up from a dream. In it, Cooper had walked through the front door like nothing had happened. He was wearing his pajamas, holding Max, and asking if breakfast was ready. She reached for him in the dream, but he faded like smoke. When she woke up, her chest was tight and her pillow was wet. She got up and sat in Cooper's room until morning. Sledge blamed himself. He told Annie one night, "I shouldn't have said he'd be fine. I shouldn't have left. Annie shook her head. We both did. We trusted he'd be okay. We didn't know. But I should have known, Sledge said. I was his dad. I was supposed to protect him. Annie didn't argue, because part of her felt the same. They tried to move forward. They ate dinner together. They watched movies. They took Robbie to school and checked his homework. But there was always something missing. A space in the car. An empty chair at the table. A quiet spot in every photo. Sometimes, Annie would get a phone call and hear a child's voice in the background. Her heart would skip. But it was never Cooper. Sometimes she'd see a boy in the grocery store with messy brown hair and think, for a moment, it was him. But it never was. The not knowing hurt the most. Had he fallen overboard? Had someone taken him? Was he alive? Was he scared? Annie asked herself those questions every day. And every day, there were no answers. Still, she hoped. She hoped in quiet ways. She kept the light on in his room. She kept his favorite cereal in the pantry. She left his toothbrush in the holder. She folded his old clothes and placed them in a box labeled, "For Cooper." Not, was, still for. Because maybe, just maybe, one day he'd come home. 3 years had passed. The Broward house was quiet most days. The living room no longer echoed with laughter. The once bright walls now felt heavy. Cooper's room remained untouched. His bed was still made. His stuffed dinosaur, Max, sat on the pillow. A blanket of silence had settled over the home, broken only by footsteps, whispers, and the hum of the refrigerator. Annie still kept Cooper's photo on the fridge, held in place by a butterfly magnet. Every morning, she kissed her fingers and touched the picture. She didn't say anything. She didn't cry. Not anymore. Her grief had changed, still deep, but quieter now. Sledge worked more than before. He didn't talk about Cooper. Not out loud. But sometimes Annie saw him standing at the doorway to their son's room, not moving, just looking in. Robbie had grown. He smiled more now. He played soccer and tried to laugh with his friends. But he didn't speak about the cruise, or the night Cooper vanished. Some pain stayed locked in the back of his mind, untouched. It was a Monday morning. Annie was alone in the kitchen. She was folding towels at the table with the window open. Outside, the trees swayed in the breeze, and a dog barked in the distance. The phone rang. She didn't rush to pick it up. Most calls these days were spam or surveys. But something made her walk over anyway. Hello? There was a pause. Then a calm, steady voice. Mrs. Broward, this is Officer Trent from the local precinct. I need you and your husband to come down to the station. It's about your son. Time froze. Annie's breath caught in her throat. Her hand slipped from the table, knocking a glass to the floor. It shattered, but she didn't move. Sledge was at work. She dialed his number with shaking hands. You need to come home, she said, her voice breaking. Now! What happened? It's the police. It's about Cooper. They said to come in. There was silence on the other end. Then, I'm on my way. They drove in silence. Sledge kept both hands tight on the wheel. His jaw clenched. He didn't look at Annie, but he reached over and held her hand. Her fingers were ice cold. Annie stared straight ahead, heart pounding. She didn't know what to expect. No one had said the words. No one had confirmed anything. But something deep inside her had already started to believe. It had been 3 years. 3 birthdays. 3 Christmases. 3 painful seasons of waiting. Could it really be over? Could it really be him? The police station looked the same. A brick building with dull windows and a small parking lot. Officer Trent was waiting for them at the front door. Thank you for coming, he said softly. "Come with me." He didn't say more. He didn't explain. He led them down a hallway with pale walls and clean floors. Every step echoed. Annie's legs felt heavy. She gripped Sledge's arm like she might fall. At the end of the hall was a plain wooden door. The officer paused. "He's inside." Annie's heart thundered in her chest. Sledge gave a single nod. The officer opened the door. There he was. Cooper. He stood near the back of the room. He was taller than before. His hair was longer. His face was thinner. His hands were dirty. His clothes were worn. But even with all the changes, it was him. Annie knew it in an instant. She gasped and stepped forward. Cooper turned. For a second, no one moved. Then his lips trembled. "Mom?" he said. Annie dropped to her knees, tears spilling down her cheeks. "Yes, baby. Yes, it's me." Cooper ran to her. She wrapped her arms around him and held him as tightly as she could, crying into his shoulder. She couldn't believe it. She didn't care how or why. He was here. He was real. Sledge crouched down and wrapped them both in his arms. "I missed you," Cooper whispered. "We missed you more," Annie said, her voice shaking. The family held each other, not letting go, afraid the moment might disappear. After a long while, Annie looked up and saw someone standing nearby. A young woman with long black hair. She wore hiking boots and carried a worn backpack over one shoulder. Her face was kind but tired. Her eyes were focused on Cooper, gentle and protective. The officer stepped forward and introduced her. "This is Mira," he said. "She's the one who found him." Annie looked at the young woman, confused. "Found him?" Mira gave a small nod. "I met Cooper in a remote village, up in the mountains. He told me who he was." She looked down at Cooper, then back at Annie and Sledge. "He said he wanted to go home?" Annie's mouth opened, but no words came out. Sledge blinked, trying to take it in. A village? Mountains? None of it made sense yet. But right now, all that mattered was this. Their son was alive, and he was finally back. Cooper sat in a quiet room at the police station. He was wrapped in a soft blanket. A cup of hot cocoa sat on the table in front of him, untouched. The lights were low. Annie and Sledge sat close, holding his hands. Mira, the young woman who found him, sat nearby listening. Officer Trent stood against the wall, letting Cooper take his time. For a long while, no one spoke. Then Cooper looked at his mom and dad. "I thought you left me," he whispered. Annie leaned in. "We would never leave you." "Never." Cooper nodded slowly. His voice was small, but steady. "I woke up that night. I had to go to the bathroom." He looked down at the table. "I didn't want to bother you, so I got up quietly. When I came out, I heard music. It sounded close. I thought maybe you were in the hallway." He rubbed the edge of the blanket between his fingers. "I opened the cabin door just a little. The lights in the hallway were still on. Then I saw the elevator. Someone inside looked like you. I couldn't see well, but I got scared. I thought you'd left without me." Annie's eyes filled with tears. "Oh, baby." I ran to the elevator and pressed the button. I wanted to find you. The elevator took him to deck 12. There were bright lights, loud music, so many people. Some were dancing. Others were laughing and walking in groups. Everyone was busy. "I tried to look for you," Cooper said. "I called your names, but no one stopped. No one heard me." He pulled the blanket tighter around himself. "Then I saw people going down a ramp. Some were leaving the ship. I thought you might be down there too." He paused, remembering. "So I followed." The dock was lit by tall lamps. Cooper walked with the crowd. He didn't understand it was a port stop, a late-night excursion for adults. "I thought I'd find you at the bottom," he said. "I thought you were waiting." But the moment he stepped onto the dock, he felt something was wrong. The crowd kept moving. Tour buses were parked nearby. People walked to shops and music-filled cafes. Cooper stood still. "I waited," he said. "But the ship, it left." And he covered her mouth. "I ran back," Cooper said. "But the ramp was gone. The ship was sailing away." I screamed. He looked down. But no one came. He sat on a bench near the water. It was cold. He hugged himself and cried. People passed by. Some looked at him. Most didn't. "I was just a kid sitting alone," he said. "But everyone was busy. I didn't know what to do." Then a man appeared. He was old, Cooper said. He had a white beard and wore a brown coat. He asked if I was okay. He said his name was Axel. He sat beside me and said I looked lost. I told him my parents were gone. I thought he'd help me get to the police. But he didn't. Sledge leaned forward. "What did he do?" "He said the city wasn't safe. That bad people might hurt me. He said he knew a quiet place far from here. He promised I'd be safe." Cooper didn't know what to say. He was scared, cold, tired. He didn't know who to trust. I went with him. They got into his old truck. It smelled like firewood and dust. Axel gave him a blanket and a piece of bread. They drove all night. The roads grew smaller. Lights became fewer. The city turned into hills, then forests. Finally, the truck stopped in a small village tucked between the mountains. There were no stores, Cooper said. No cars. Just wooden houses and dirt paths. Axel's home was small. It had a fireplace, a vegetable garden, and a wooden porch. He made me a bed near the fire. He gave me warm food. He said I could stay as long as I wanted. At first, Cooper believed he'd be sent home soon. I asked every day, "Can I go home now?" He would say, "Maybe later." Then days turned into weeks. Weeks into months. I stopped asking. Annie whispered, "Oh, Cooper." "He wasn't mean," Cooper said. "He never hit me. He taught me things. I helped him milk goats, carry firewood, fix fences." His voice grew quiet. But he wouldn't let me leave. Ever. Axel told the villagers that Cooper was his nephew. Most people believed him, Cooper said. No one asked questions. They didn't talk much. It was like the whole village didn't want trouble. He went to bed early. There was no electricity, no phone, no TV. No one had the internet. It was like time had stopped there. Years passed. Cooper forgot what his home smelled like. He forgot what a microwave was. He forgot the names of his teachers. He stopped counting the days. I thought maybe this was my life now, he said. Maybe no one was looking for me anymore. And he grabbed his hand. We never stopped looking. He smiled faintly. I hope that. Then, one day, Mira arrived. She was with a hiking group. They stayed one night in the village. Cooper helped carry their bags and led them to the guest house. She was nice, Cooper said. She smiled, asked me my name. Something about her made me feel safe. Later, when they were alone, he whispered the truth. I told her, I don't belong here. I said I was taken. She listened. Mira nodded. I promised him I'd help. When Mira returned to the city, she searched online. I found his photo on a missing children's site, she said. It was still there after all this time. She called the police right away. 2 officers came to the village. They asked Axel about me, Cooper said. He didn't fight. He just stood on the porch and said, He's yours now." They drove Cooper down the mountain. He kept Max, the stuffed dinosaur, in a small bag beside him. Now, sitting in the police station with his parents, Cooper leaned his head on Annie's shoulder. "I didn't think I'd ever see you again." Annie kissed his forehead. "You're home now." Sledge looked into his eyes. "You're so brave." Cooper closed his eyes. He looked tired, but safe. And for the first time in 3 years, he was no longer lost.